enter the depths of Gotham City, foraying into the world of the Dark Knight and the mind of Bruce Wayne ahead of the upcoming Batman film. We will be joined later on by psychologist Dr. Travis Langley, author of Batman and Psychology, Dark and Stormy Night, to help break down his book and the upcoming movie for our Batman primer. But before that, I'm joined as always by my co-host Garrett. How's it going, Garrett?
No, it's going good. I'm working here off a unofficial setup because my PC died. R.I.P. If we had a soundboard here, there'd be a little sad noise. So I'm on my girlfriend's laptop. But super excited to talk about the Batman. I'm stoked for this movie, and we are going to be joined today by someone who has a unique insight into this character and his entire world. So I'm excited for it.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun. Full disclosure, we already recorded it. We're recording this after the fact, but it was awesome. So stay tuned. Yeah. It's a long episode, but it's worth it. We dive into the minds of each and every character in the Batman, and it's a lot of fun. So make sure you stick through it because it's a good one. If you're watching us on YouTube, help us combat that algorithm. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, comment. You guys are joined by Sonic and Obi throughout the episode. It's great. So help us out there. Help us combat that algorithm. Hit the like button. If you're listening in the audio format, tell your friends that, hey, they may have lost their auto sub and that's why they're not seeing it. You just research our name, you'll see it. It's fine. Anywhere you get your podcasts, we are independent now. The Agents of Fandom, the three people behind this that you've been seeing rocking and rolling, it's now us doing all the things. And so
we're
Agents of
captaining
Fandom,
the ship now.
Exactly. And so Agents of Fandom, you can check out the website, agentsoffandom.com, at Agents Fandom on Twitter, any of our socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We got to get better at TikTok. We're going to get better for you. Don't worry. We have plans. Things are going to improve. Current giveaway we got going. We just gave away our 2 comics, the Spider-Man variant ones. So congrats to our 2 winners there. Check out our Twitter to see the winners. And the new one we got going, our producer, Ruben, the man behind the great intro, the great graphics, is also the man behind the sweet new shirts we're giving away. So we're giving away some Doctor Strange themed shirts. There's going to be Spider-Man ones coming in the future. Make sure you check out our Twitter for those giveaways. Last boring thing to plug, but we have to do it. Like, to keep giving you this content we want to give you, we need these little things to help us out. And so, last small thing, head over to Spotify, click that 5-star rating button. Head over to Apple Podcasts, click that 5-star rating button, write a nice little review. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. It can just be, hey, these guys are sweet. Hey, my favorite color is green. As long as it's accompanied with a 5-star review, 5-star rating, it helps us.
But we would prefer that it's something nice about us instead of just your favorite color. But it's up to you.
You have a question, you want to get it on the pod, I can guarantee we'll answer it if it's there. Stuff like that, it's a surefire way to get our attention as long as it's got that 5-star.
Also, all new reviews that weren't counted in like the last giveaway we had, we will account for them in the next giveaway. So that is also a way to like keep entering yourself into our giveaways besides retweeting and following and all that other stuff.
One written review on Apple Podcasts is worth 10 retweets. 10 entries will get you an extra 10 into the randomizer. Now, tonight is an exciting night because on top of this episode, we are going to be doing the best and most exciting draft we have ever done. The Agents of Fandom are presenting to you Marvel Madness, where we're going to be joined by content creators throughout the industry, all your favorites. We got comicbook.com, The Direct, The Luminarity, a bunch of other ones, a bunch of podcast hosts. It's going to be a blast. And how it's going to work is every character who's been in an MCU movie or TV show, not including the Netflix ones, not including the Everything is Canon in the multiverse, just the main MCU timeline.
No what if.
No what if, live action only, excluding Celestials. Everyone else is on the table for a draft. We're going to be drafting Avengers-style teams There's 16 different teams, and we're going to be drafting teams to go toe-to-toe against each other in a head-to-head bracket-style tournament, just like you'd see on college basketball March Madness, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. It is going to be you, the listeners, who are going to be voting on the winners, and there's going to be a new matchup every day, every couple of days that we're going to be posting for you to vote on to tell who you think would win in a fight between the two teams going up against each other.
And we'll have polls on Twitter for you guys to voice your opinions, and the winners of the poll will advance to the next round and face another team. And sorry about that. And at the end, we'll eventually have two people, and then we'll have one Marvel Madness winner. So tonight we'll be drafting those teams, and then once March hits and we fire up a couple graphics, we get the brackets all situated, then we'll start firing up.
Another theme of today's podcast.
You're not muted, by the way, TJ.
I know that. Another theme of today's podcast is Obi and Sonic are being jerks. They're fighting each other throughout, and I can't contain them. Ava's not in town. She's on her way to Winnipeg right now. I'm sitting here by my lonesome with all three animals, and while the majority of the time I keep them in check, every now and then they get the best of me, but that's okay.
Mine are actually being nice right now. So
yeah, these two are just in fighting mode right now. But hopefully that means they'll be all relaxed by the time we get our draft going. Obi's still cute as ever. Sonic likes to stay out of the frame. But I watched episode 5 of Naomi this morning. It was great as ever. It's picking up. It's getting better. And it was very enjoyable. And this is significant because obviously we've been talking Naomi because we've had a lot of features in the past.
Yeah, we've got to speak to a few of the cast members.
Exactly. But on the 28th, we are going to be coming to you with an interview with Kent Falcon, who is going to be the director of episode 6 of Naomi. And he is he's fairly new to the game, but the stuff he's done so far has been awesome. He's been featured in Blackish. He's been featured in a bunch of other things. And we can't wait to talk to him about working with the amazing people of Naomi, working with Ava DuVernay, and all the other type of stuff we always do. It's going to be a fun time. The last plug before we start getting into the news. We were recently featured on a podcast called the Racial Draft Podcast. We're going to be hopping in there more in the future as well with some of our friends who are going to be on the draft tonight. Go check that out. The Racial Draft Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah. So just to give a little bit of background to this for anyone listening, we didn't really know what we were in for when we agreed to go on this podcast, and it kind of all got explained to us on the go. And so I will explain it to you guys now in a quick fashion. I think it's a really cool idea. It was really cool to be a part of. I respect the heck out of all of these people, and here it is. So the Racial Draft Podcast is based on like a fantasy sports system of scoring from the Fantasy Comics League. And there's a bunch of delegations of different races, like the African American delegation. We are part of, obviously, the white delegation. There's a Latinx delegation, a Jewish delegation, a Native American delegation, and so on. And basically, each delegation gets to nominate a comic character, and the other delegations bid on that character to have their race changed, essentially. And each time you bid, you have to put forth a visual reference of a new actor to play the role. So TJ, can you give an example of that?
So as you can imagine, not knowing what we're getting into, stepping into Team White is not exactly the most fun, because we are either going to be the villains, which some of the people on the podcast have decided to take on
that role. Yeah.
And we didn't really want to be aligning with that on the first one. And so we've been thinking about ideas of what we can bring to it. And it's not just a visual representation, but an option is to kind of bring forth
a backstory.
And so I honestly am thinking of like basically pitching a little fun comic idea to do with our team in the future when it's all said and done, of basically just like the entitled Avengers, where it's a superhero team with a lot of white privilege mixed in. And our team, I think we have two teams so far. We have two members so far. I think we have Moon Knight and Scarlet Witch are the only two we've drafted so far, and it's a slippery slope because I'm not. When you're
And
changing
it's
something
not
like
a draft. Let me just say it's an auction. So we
it's
have
an
we
auction.
have a set amount of money that we can use. So I just wanted to clarify that real quick. It's not a draft, it's an auction.
Yeah, and so we are not about to be on a team that's trying to change Miles Morales into a white guy, because obviously that is so not the same thing as changing Peter Parker into a different
Into a Jewish
nationality.
guy.
Yeah, and so we're gonna try and take a different approach than and not go full on villain mode. We're gonna try and take a more parody satire approach and see how it goes. So maybe stay tuned for a little mini comic strip, see if we can do something with that.
But definitely go check out the Racial Draft podcast. Certainly the episode that we were on. And if you guys enjoy it, check out other episodes as well. We're going to be kind of involved a little bit this season going forward in the scoring and whatnot. So we'll probably make a couple more appearances in the future. But it was an enlightening experience. And we talk a lot about representation on this podcast. So I think it's important for us to kind of live what we talk about. And yeah, if we have to sit in the hot seat and be the white guys auctioning off people of other races, then I guess we will have to do it. But it's a good learning lesson, and the people involved, by the way, the delegations are all filled with people of that perspective race. So everything is very friendly. Nothing is mean or vindictive or racist or anything. We're all very respective. They're all very respectful of everyone else. But it was a great learning experience. So I encourage you guys to go check that out.
Big time. And so check out the Racial Draft podcast. Make sure to stay tuned to our socials for Marvel Madness, as all your favorite content creators in the industry go toe to toe, just like Obi and Sonic are right now off screen. I don't know if you can hear their growls, but they're in full wrestling mode right now. Small amount of Marvel news to touch on, and we're going to try and rip through it quickly because this is a meaty episode. Our guest has a PhD in psychology and Batman. This is the man who literally wrote the book on Batman. Yes. And so with our Batman primer, we get into it. And when he goes on a tangent that is interesting and educational, we let him roll with it. So it's a big episode. And so we're going to try and rip through this Marvel news quickly. Spider-Man No Way Home Blu-ray is expected to have not only a bunch of bonus features, but it's expected to have an extended cut. And now one of the complaints both of us had about Spider-Man No Way Home is, despite its long runtime, we felt like it could have been a little longer because it was missing a few things. Do you think we're going to get our second Matt Murdock scene and maybe a little bit extra of Toby and Andrew doing some swinging in our extended cut of the movie?
Yeah, so I think, prior to the movie coming out, we had heard, or at least I had heard, leaks, rumors, whatever, about them filming a court scene with Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock. So I think that footage exists, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, why not throw it out there if you have it? We all loved it. Also, news came out yesterday on Twitter that when Charlie Cox went to go see the movie in theaters, his crowd didn't cheer for the moment when Daredevil shows up. So let's give him more recognition. Let's chuck that in the bonus features and let him kind of revel in his success. He deserves it. And as far as the Spider-Man go, I think it said we have like at least 20 extra minutes of Peter 2 and Peter 3. So yeah, I definitely hope that there's more of them swinging together and fighting around. And, even if it's just them shooting the shit, I'm okay with it.
Exactly. And I don't know if it'll necessarily be an extended cut or just deleted scenes that we'll get to see separate, but either way, there's more reason to go out and buy oh my gosh, you two.
More reasons to go out and buy the extended cut of Spider-Man
to
No Way Home.
Get some time away from the dogs in your house is a reason. No, I love you all so much. You're all great. But just come on, we're almost done.
Later on
Almost
in
there,
this
guys.
episode, Sonic and Obi, we're gonna introduce you to a character called the Dog Stapler.
Yeah, if you know, no, don't covering Obi's ears. That was someone brought up by our guest, Dr. Travis Langley. Apparently, is a deep cut Batman villain. But in more Marvel news, we're going to be we don't have the Thor Love and Thunder trailer yet, but we finally got some merch. We got some Lego looks, and there was some cool Gore the God Butcher stuff. But the biggest thing I want to focus on is the first look we saw of not only Thor's new uniform, but Jane Foster as the mighty Thor with a reassembled Mjolnir. What do you think of these first images we got?
I don't like that you asked me about these first images, but then also said you didn't want to talk about Gore, because that was the biggest thing that I took away from the images.
Then yeah, you hit Gore. I'll hit Jane.
That sounds good to me. I haven't really seen a lot of discourse about this, but I thought he looked kind of lame. All I saw was the fact that he's holding All Black the Necro Sword, which is a big deal, and I'm glad that was shown and it's, proved to be happening in the movie. But is this man just wearing like robes? Like,
that's why I was gonna gloss over it, because I really wish the first look we got at him was either in a cool official poster or in a trailer, something like that, something official in its glory, and not just a little toy sequence. But because it was disappointing. It was
disappointing,
yeah,
man.
Because I'm trying to keep the positive sides.
But I want to talk about it because we did a draft earlier. We did a draft earlier with the Eternals, and I drafted Gore the God Butcher to be on my team. I'm super excited for this dude to show up. We're in the sweet spot for when a Thor trailer should be releasing, and this is what we get, and it kind of is underwhelming. That bums me out. So,
and it would be a shame. It'd be a shame not to talk about it too in an episode where we're going to be talking so much about Christian Bale.
True, exactly. So I'm gonna hold my hopes for the future when we get a better first look, an actual first look, even just a look at the costume maybe he's wearing in the future. But right now I'm a little worried.
Yeah, and that worry is fair, but it also comes with some cool aspects from the Lego sets. Thor's costume looks unreal. Jane looks unreal, and Thor's got Stormbreaker. Jane has Mjolnir, and it's full
cracks and all.
Cracks and all. It doesn't seem as though it's a different dimensions Mjolnir. It's a reassembled version, and there's rumors that Idri the Dwarf could be coming back for Thor: Love and Thunder. So maybe that's how they bring the broken pieces to Idri. He puts it all together, and next thing you know, Jane is wielding it up. There's casting news as well to go along with toy news. Blade has cast Aaron Pierre in a major unknown role. This could be anybody. This could be a vampire. It could be somebody tying in with the Midnight Suns in the future. We don't know who it's going to be, but what we know is it's going to be a major role. This isn't somebody who's just showing up in the movie. It's somebody who's going to be around for a while. Do you have any guesses who this could be, or should we keep Blade shrouded in mystery?
We should keep it shrouded in mystery, but I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. I don't know a whole lot about Blade. I have not seen the Blade movies ever.
Ooh.
And so that is something that I'm very much looking forward to do, and I'm waiting. I'm specifically waiting, even though stuff like this happens and I rethink my decision to wait. But I was waiting to watch it when either we got a release date or close to that release date so that I could be fresh in my mind. But yeah, I don't know a whole lot about Blade, even though I did draft him in one of our or did you draft it? You drafted him.
We've each taken him in a draft so far.
Okay. I know he was on my short list, and I think I chose Ghost Rider over him.
Yeah, I took him in the most recent one, but I think in an earlier draft you've taken him before.
I think actually Rich took him. With his Hulk and Deadpool team. His Immortal team.
Yeah.
But so I did a little bit of research and learned a little bit about him for when I had him on my short list in the draft. But yeah, I don't know a whole lot about Blade, so I don't want to speculate on who this might be because I could sound like a buffoon.
So one of our members of our draft from comicbook.com, Adam Barnhart, has been speculating that you should rewatch the Blade stuff now because one, I think Blade could come before the Blade movie,
I
but
think so
maybe
too.
maybe as soon as Moon Knight, and so it might be time to step on that. But he was speculating that this could be, I think, the same character as the person who Ryan Reynolds plays in the original trilogy. And so I think that would be funny for you to go take a look at, knowing that speculation from Adam. The final bit of casting I want us to touch on, and it's maybe not something we'd normally talk a lot about because the Sonyverse, a lot of people view it as outside the MCU. Yeah, it probably is. But one of the exclusive Agents of Fandom scoops we've talked about here on this podcast is that some variation of Kraven the Hunter will be appearing in the MCU in the future. Whether that's this Kraven movie or a variant in the future, we don't know. But it makes this movie more interesting to talk about. And one of the characters they've just cast,
at least until Morbius comes out.
At least until Morbius comes out.
And
Unless,
we figure out
until
the
we find out a little more
situation.
So one of the people joining on, there's had a lot of casting news, and like we said, it's a meaty episode, so we're just going to touch quick. But the Chameleon's going to be in the show. Do you have any background on the Chameleon character at all?
He's the half brother of Kraven, and that's about all I know. And I assume he switches up his disguise.
Yeah, he switches up his disguise, and so he's a big member of like the Insidious Six, which is the '90s animated series version of the Sinister Six, and he's in that show quite a bit. And I don't even really know what the actor will be bringing to the role because in that the only rendition I've seen of Chameleon, he doesn't speak unless he is somebody else, and so it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. But you know what? That's enough for Marvel news. While we started as a Marvel podcast, this episode is dedicated to the Batman. And so now, without further ado, let's get to it. And it is time to talk some Batman. Now, we are joined, as I'm interrupted by my two dogs having a little spat with each other. We have, like we spoke about earlier, we have a very special guest joining us for our Batman segment. We are here now with psychologist Dr. Travis Langley, author of Batman and Psychology, A Dark and Stormy Night, Part 1, and now Part 2 that is coming out right now. Thank you for joining us, Travis.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I'm just distracted by watching your dogs in the reflection back there.
Yeah, they pick the most opportune times to start going at it. They've been napping for the last 2 hours, and as soon as we start recording, they decide it's time to start going at it.
Something's happening. It's time to do stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my cats are lazier than that. They'll still try to walk on keyboards during interviews, of course, because they're cats.
Hopefully we can get an appearance in today's episode. So before we get too deep into the movie, why don't you give us a background of some of the stuff you've done? Like we talked about, you are an author of 2 Batman and Psychology books, but you're a psychologist as well. You're a professor who's done a lot of teaching. For our viewers, can you give us a little background on who you are and your love of Batman?
I am Dr. Travis Langley, Distinguished Professor of Psychology at Henderson State University. And I have to point out that is my actual rank. That's not me calling myself distinguished. I have a PhD in psychology from Tulane University in New Orleans. I've always been a fan of Batman. My baby book shows that one of my earliest words was Batman. So you ask me when I discovered the character, that's like asking when I discovered my toes. I don't know. It's always been there. I was born to love Batman, clearly, which I guess gives me a different perspective when some people talk about why they got into Batman. It's like, well, I always like Batman. Why not? But I teach at a liberal arts university. I usually teach things like the psychology of crime, mental illness, social behavior. But every spring I do some special topic. This semester it's love and sexual behavior, but last year it was serial crime. The spring before that it was Batman. I do a Batman class about once every 4 years. I've done that 3 times now, and I don't have to disguise it. Only students who want the word Batman on their transcripts are in that room. And I wrote a book on I'm best known as author of the book Batman in Psychology: A Dark and Stormy Night, the best book on Batman ever written by me. And sometimes I'll say that when I'm doing a book signing, if the person still stays very straight faced, I know it's like, okay, they don't even know I'm joking. Whether they appreciate it or not is different. It's like, okay, we're not joking about anything then, because the person doesn't quite get what I just said. So I love what I do. I've edited and been the lead writer on a dozen other books since then. About half of them are on actually exactly half of them are on comic book characters. If I count The Walking Dead as half comic book, half TV show, exactly half of the 13 books are on comic book characters. Six of those are on superheroes. Because I love superheroes. Well, actually, it's 5 superheroes, and one's on the Joker. Because the most recent one was the Joker Psychology, Evil Clowns, and the Women Who Love Them. But now, as of this week, we've got Batman in Psychology: A Dark and Stormy Night, 2nd edition.
And I have to say, that's probably the coolest cover I've ever seen on any book ever.
The new one has a really cool cover. I mean, I always loved the original's cover, but the new one where it mixes the bat symbol with a Rorschach. Because the first one was a really great representation. I mean, it was Batman. It was the silhouette of Batman's head, so it's getting into Batman's head that way. But this one says psychology so strongly.
Yes.
My other one could as easily have been a cover for like Batman and Philosophy, which was a very good book, and it has its own good cover. Mark White and others edited Batman and Philosophy: Dark Night of the Soul, which is a good book, and I'll recommend that. And I didn't write in that book because I'm psychology. And if you don't know the difference between psychology and philosophy out there, hey, our books are a great way to learn.
And that one's got a great title too.
It does, yeah. Batman and Psychology: Dark Night of the Soul. That is a very good title, and I think it fits the philosophy a little bit, or religion. It would have been a good one for one on Batman and religion. Yeah. There are several books on Batman and religion out there. Paul Essay wrote one, although his is specific to the Nolan films, and there are a couple of others on religion and superheroes. And I read this stuff too. I don't just write it. I read everybody else's books too.
Well, I gotta dip my feet into more stuff now because I'm only privy to your writings, but
that's okay
piqued
too.
My interest.
I was gonna say you're gonna make for a great guest on the podcast because you're ticking all of Garrett and my boxes in terms of. I feel like we both would have liked to take just a full psych degree in all of your classes in terms of the mental health, the crime aspect to all of those things.
No, but I would have been so bummed if I found out it was like every 4 years and I missed the semester by like 1, or like the semester before or the semester after. I'd have to like hold myself back to.
Well, the first 2 were 3 years apart, and actually I'm probably going to do. It depends on what's going on at the university. I'll probably do them 3 years in between this time too, because the last one got thrown off because it was right when lockdown happened. So we're a little bit into the semester and suddenly it went completely online. And this is a really conversational class. If I'd planned ahead of time for it to be a completely online class, but so it was kind of chaotic. So I'd like to do it a little sooner. But no, I know the first 2 times were 3 years apart because I had this one student who was a freshman when he took Batman. And I was like, how did this freshman talk me into letting him into that class? But he was really great. And 3 years later, he wanted to take it again. And so now you've already had it. I can come up with some different things, but we've got to have a different listing for you. So he not only had Batman on his transcript, he had Advanced Batman.
Advanced Batman. Wow. Don't mess with that guy and his Batman degrees.
He beat the campaign and then he restarted New Game Plus
on expert level
and got Advanced Batman.
And that particular student speaks in the documentary Legends of the Night, which Brett Culp did excuse me. He interviewed us 10 years ago, right about now, or 10 years ago next month. It was while he was doing his Kickstarter for his documentary about people who were inspired by Batman in different aspects of life. And if you haven't seen that documentary, you really should look up Legends of the Night. Some of it has people like Denny O'Neil talking about the significance of Batman, Michael Uslan, producer of the movies. but it also has people such as Jill Pantozzi, who grew up with muscular dystrophy, and when she was a small child would just wish that she would wake up with superpowers in the morning, and eventually the kid's going to realize that will never happen, but she reassured herself, you know what, Batman doesn't have superpowers and he makes everything work, and so Batman became her inspiration.
Wow.
People of the one-legged Dance Dance Revolution champion who was inspired by Batman. People like that, their stories fill it. And in the middle, there's this 5-minute segment of me and my students, where I'm talking about using Batman to teach. I feel out of place among all those inspirational stories throughout the film, but it was on Netflix for a while. It's not still on Netflix. It's available on Amazon and other places. It is a wonderful documentary.
Yeah,
And I even talk about it a little bit in the new edition of the Batman book, because one of the new chapters is about Batman's power to inspire. Like the first half of the chapter about how he inspires other characters in his world, other than Robin's. Robin's have their own chapter, but additional characters. And then the latter about how he inspires people in real life.
Well,
you were starting to say something?
He inspires people in real life. He inspires people in comics. And I think that's the reason why we've already seen 13 live action Batman movies so far, from Adam West to Ben Affleck, George Clooney to Christian Bale, directors like Tim Burton, Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder. And now we're getting Matt Reeves' take on Robert Pattinson's Batman. We have a star-studded cast: Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Colin Farrell, Jeffrey Wright, Paul Dano, Annie Serkis, Barry Keoghan. It's going to be wild. This movie officially comes out March 4th, but there are lots of early IMAX screenings as well. I'm seeing it on the 2nd. When are you seeing it, Garrett?
I'm seeing it on the 1st.
I'm waiting until the 4th. I could have seen it already, but I've got a speaking engagement, a book signing beforehand, and then a Q&A session afterwards. So I'm on the 4th, so I'm going to see it on the 4th.
Wow. So you don't know anything about it?
No, this is one where the page where I'm speculating about in the book and the psychological issues that need to be addressed and that appear to be addressed in it. This is where I have to rely on the fact that I'm friends with the executive producer,
right?
So that he could see what I'd written and give me a nudge if I were heading the wrong way on what I had to say based on what little I knew about it. But no, I want to be surprised. Of course, I've watched every trailer, but I want, of course, at 3 hours, you could show me a bunch of trailers and clips and still have plenty of room to surprise me. That's a long freaking movie, but it has a bunch of characters. It has, well, as many villains as Batman & Robin. Plus gangsters. It actually has more, but it has 3 hours of story to tell, and they aren't each taking a central focus as the crime story of it. The Clooney movie, that movie is a little bit of a mess. You may have noticed.
It is a bit of a mess, and that brings me for my next question for the two of you. Of all the Batman projects in the past, give me your favorite live action and your favorite animated Batman project.
Okay. Well, I know my answers. What are yours, Garrett?
Okay. In all seriousness, I would have to say Christopher Nolan's Batman.
Which one? I mean, I'm not even gonna let you call them all three broadly. Which of them?
Oh man. For me,
I mean, you don't have to have a favorite.
Dark Knight Rises. Yeah,
that's why you were hesitating to answer, because a lot of people, that is not their favorite.
Exactly. But for me, I loved it so much. And besides that, on a less serious note, the first Batman movie I ever watched was Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
And I was like at such an impressionable age that it was the coolest thing to me. So it came on like a little bit later in life. It became a thing where people started to, or I guess I wasn't old enough at the time to understand the discourse, but later in life, when it became a discourse again and people started to hate on it, I didn't realize that it was like a hated thing. And so
that was a great way to find it. Honestly, I'm glad you were able to see it where you could appreciate it. My kids were pretty little when they saw it. Although the older one of the two, he enjoyed it, but he knew something was off. But it's kind of like when I saw as a kid the Adam West reruns. And I didn't know it was a joke. I mean, years later, I saw it referred to as a sitcom. It's like, that's not a sitcom. What are you talking about?
Yeah, he's
It's
fighting for his life every week.
little kids appreciated the daring do, the adventure, the Batman of it. There were adults who could enjoy the camp humor. There were adults who would just shrug it off. It was more around age 13 where people had trouble with that show. It's especially when it was brand new. Such as, well, Michael Euston, and part of him going into producing the movies was his childhood vow to show people that Batman's a real hero.
And it's Garrett, I love that you have a soft spot for that movie, because so do I. That was the first Batman movie that I've ever watched as well. And it's one of those movies that people look back on and they have so many criticisms for, but I have such a soft spot for it. And another one for that, like that for me, is the Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer movie. I thought that was so cool when that came out, and people always talk about that as like a crappy superhero sequel. I loved that movie.
I hate that I didn't realize it until like later on in life, but I love that I was able to like live in, like, bask in that love up until, my teenage years, when I finally realized that.
Well, except for this Cloud Galactus, except for that, it was a whole lot truer to the Lee Kirby stories than a lot of people seem to realize. Like this silly thing of the power swapping, they're all merging into one guy. That is so much like something that would have been thrown into a 60s comic. There are just a lot of it. There's a scene in there when they're getting married.
Fantastic Four cartoon, like that's a classic thing that would happen just in the middle of a season.
Yeah, well, there is a scene in there that is straight from the comics when Stan's making his cameo, trying to get in the wedding, but they're turning him away. That happened in the comic book. In the comic, they put it where he and Jack Kirby are trying to get into Reed and Sue's wedding, and they're getting turned away. And it's like they did that. Kirby was no longer around, and by then. That is one of the things that's a shame, is people like Jack Kirby, not getting to see where things are these days.
Right.
Although the bigger sin is Bill Finger dying before the world even knew who he was.
I learned so much about him reading your book, to be honest with you. So thank you for that. And anyone listening, you should go out and get this book. And if you love psychology, if you love Batman, either or both, you're gonna love it. I promise you. I was gripped the entire time. And shout out to my high school psych teacher. I put out a post on Facebook hoping to get some psychology buffs to like send me some smarter, more knowledgeable in psychology people to send me some like awesome questions. And I was like really hoping that my high school AP psych teacher was gonna reach out and like send me this awesome question, and she didn't. But shout out to Miss Pasek. She started my love for psychology, and though I didn't pursue it, educationally later on, I still love reading about stuff like this. So this was an exciting interview for me.
Well, most people are interested in psychology, they just don't know it. If you're interested in people, you are interested in psychology. If you ask, why did they do that? You're asking a psychological question. And that's one of the reasons that we get a lot of people who used to major in other things. Like once they decide something, I don't want to put any area down, but like say you decide physics is not your calling. What are you going to do with that? I mean, technically there's physics in every area of life, but you don't actually have to think about it. You are naturally following the rules. But psychology, well, there are people in every job in the world. And we get a lot of people used to major in other things. It's a very flexible degree. And yeah, if you want to work very specifically in the field, it's best to get an advanced degree. If you have a job that requires a bachelor's, psychology is really good for that.
I agree completely. It was the degree I chose prior to getting into education. So I have my Bachelor of Education, and I'm one class away from my psychology degree. So I'll be completing that soon. And it's definitely helped me with my own understanding of my own mental health, as like I've been diagnosed with ADHD, PTSD, anxiety, depression. And so I have a loud inner monologue. And so it's really helped me understand, kind of process it and know what is not reality, essentially talking, and what's a what's a voice in my head telling me something and what is logic telling me something. And it's really allowed me to help kind of separate the two.
Yeah, three main reasons for going into psychology. What tends to motivate those who are going into it in the first place? You want to help people, you want to understand people, you want to understand yourself.
Yeah.
It was a combo of the three for me. And so we're going to touch a lot more on the book as we go through this episode, but Garrett, I'm not letting you get away that easy. You got the controversial take with The Dark Knight Rises. What's your top animated Batman feature?
It's tough not to say Batman the Animated Series.
That's like if you want, there's no shame in going with the classic.
But for me as a kid, I really enjoyed watching Batman Beyond.
Me too. Me too. That's mine. That's my top animated.
And I knew you were gonna say that, but I gotta stay true to my heart. So that's just what I enjoyed watching as a kid. I love the like futuristic aspect of it, and he's passed the torch down to not a Robin.
It was Shui.
My favorite moment from Batman Beyond is when he's been getting messed with, but he knows what's going on because the voice was calling him Bruce. And when he's telling Terry, it's like, well, I knew it wasn't real because he was calling me Bruce, and that's not how I think of myself. And Terry starts like, well, what do you think of yourself? Well, of course that's what you call yourself in your head, but that's my name now. And Bruce is just, tell that to my subconscious.
You wrote about that in your book, did you not?
Oh yeah, I put that in there.
Yeah,
because
I was like, that sounds so familiar. I feel like I just read that like last week because I was reading your book. That's why. Okay, so someone else now.
Well, my favorite live action film is probably Batman Begins. And I can go into all kinds of reasons why the Dark Knight is the more well-constructed film. Is Batman Begins has this very special place because it was the first one where we really got into Batman as character, into Bruce Wayne as character. In the Burton movies, Bruce is distant, he's mysterious. You learn everything through the point of view of other characters. You learn about him through Vicky Vale, and then you're going to get a flashback from his point of view to when he was a kid. But there's a lot of distance, not just between him and other characters, but there's distance between him and the audience. So I love those movies. I was blown away by Batman '89 the first time I saw it. But Batman Begins was one where we really got to stay with him as the character throughout the movie. Now I'm really looking forward to the Batman because I want to see a smarter Batman. It's you get down to it, the smartest versions of Batman in the movies have tended to be the silliest ones. You hate to say this, but much as I like the Christian Bale Batman, he's the dumbest Batman in the bunch. He is. It's like he's going up to fight Bane. What's his plan? He has no plan. He's going to attack him the exact same way he did back when Bane broke his back. So the Val Kilmer knows more about science as his version of Batman. And of course, the Adam West Batman was presented as being incredibly smart about just about everything. And it has been very important to Matt Reeves to show Batman finally as more of a detective than we've seen in the past. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
And the detective stuff is great because it brings Batman back to his roots of detective comics. That's what DC is named after. And we're going to finally get that year 2 detective Batman. And it's fun because my favorite is the Dark Knight. So we kind of, the three of us, we complete that trilogy. The reason for me it was the Dark Knight is because, like I said, I have a loud inner monologue. I'm always overthinking. And that was like the first movie, not the first, but the best movie for me, that when I watched it for the first time, I was sitting there like, I have no idea what is going to happen. And everything I thought would happen was wrong. And when I thought it was over, it would go again. And it just took me for an absolute roller coaster. What were you going to say there, Garrett?
I mean, you don't really even need to give an explanation.
Yeah,
as to why you choose that movie. That movie, all three are great movies, but that movie is, dare I say, a masterpiece.
Do you have a favorite part, or what's a favorite part of your favorite Batman movie? So in your case, it's the ampersand movie. Do you have a favorite? What was like some particular thing in there that grabbed you or that blew you away when you were a kid?
So it was very specifically when they were trying to evacuate the hospitals,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember feeling like at that point of the movie, it should be winding down. Like this should be the climax. Like things should be they should be figuring out so it ends. And obviously I was a bit younger as the movie came out, and that was the point in the film where I was truly thinking, like, how does he win? What is going to happen? It seems like this movie is about to be over, and it seems like he has no way of winning. And it kind of, what I love about The Dark Knight is it almost has a bit of that Ocean's 11 type feel of like, the job's gonna get done in the end, but you don't really find out how everything happens until afterwards. And The Dark Knight, I felt it was similar in that sense.
I definitely didn't fully understand it until I watched it like a lot of times. So I definitely watching it in the theater, I was like blown away by this. It was such a crazy experience, a crazy ride, but there's so many levels and there's so much to take in that I like probably still to this day don't even understand everything about that movie.
Every time you rewatch, you pick up something new, and it's like, oh, you forget.
And that's why I love Christopher Nolan. He's my favorite director. I feel like with all of his movies, I pick something up new every time I watch it.
Yeah, when I'm writing about Batman, I will have two movies just playing in the background over and over. It's the first two Nolan movies. You know, my wife could walk in and there's Batman Begins again, or there's The Dark Knight again. It could be one of the others. And I rewatched them all when writing these books. And so I've seen Batman ampersand Robin 4 times. Once when it came out, once in writing a chapter in the first edition, and then once again while working on the second. What was the third one? Oh, the third one was a friend and I did a marathon rewatching all Batman movies right before The Dark Knight Rises came out. That the night we got to Batman and Robin, that was the night my wife was really late joining us.
Interesting. Coincidence. That's funny.
That's
See,
funny.
I probably watched that movie 20 times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not proud of that.
Actually, the one I've probably seen the most could be Batman Forever, but for a weird reason. Early in my teaching career, just the summer when Batman Forever came out, I made some extra money by doing head counts at the movie theater. And for 5 weeks, I was there doing the head counts on Batman Forever. So I also saw that movie over and over for 5 weeks.
Wow. That's could you put an estimate on how many times you think you saw it in those 5 weeks?
At least 3 dozen. Oh, I've seen Batman Begins more than that. I probably saw it 3 dozen, Batman Forever 3 dozen times. Plus, I've seen it again. I've seen it right before that, and I've seen it again since then. So
I don't think I've seen any movie that many times. That's impressive. TJ, what do you got there? What are you showing?
A treat for our YouTube viewers. Batman Forever for the Super Nintendo was one of my favorite first original video games that I ever played. It's just your classic moving left to right, press one button for punch, one button for kick, one button for utility belt. But it was so much fun, and I had a blast playing it.
those old side scrollers.
Yeah, exactly. It was a classic.
And the games only got better after that.
100%. But I still like going back to the old ones every now and then. Of course. Travis,
I can't exactly play the game while I'm typing, but I remember when I was working on the first edition, one of my sons would play one of the Arkham games there while I would be. Sometimes I'd be ignoring him. Sometimes I'd suddenly be watching Batman and Zaz or Batman and Hugo Strange. So I would vicariously get the game that way, and then I'd start typing things that I'd be thinking about.
Those are some of my favorite games of all time and some of my favorite Batman media of all time. So I hope you enjoyed what you were able to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, I barely refer to them ever in the book. There are a couple places, but it's part of it is just the audience is not going to know. Not as many people will know the story as they do with these other things.
Right, right. Oh, it's a great story though. If you guys haven't, anyone listening, if you haven't played those games, you're missing out.
Travis, I want to know, we've reminisced through all these games and sources and movies and sources of Batman media. We talked a bit about how this is going to be a different Bruce. You're looking forward to a smarter Bruce, and we're getting him year 2, full detective mode, full of rage. We're also seeing a different rendition of Catwoman. We're getting Commissioner Gordon before he's commissioner. I'm not sure if he's Detective Gordon, Sergeant Gordon, or what he is at this point, but I know it's pre-commissioner. What aspects of Batman are you excited to see that are going to be brand new in this film?
One thing, even aside from the detective, at the personal level, this business of him just not caring about being Bruce Wayne, he's not even pretending, he's just staying out of the limelight. We're going to see him find a reason why he has to develop the public persona as opposed to just being a recluse. I think that will be very interesting. People like to ask this question: who's the real character, Batman or Bruce Wayne? And the easy answer to say is, well, Batman's the real character, and there's a lot of truth in that. But there is a Batman act, which Nolan's version talks about it, where he says, Batman can't show that he can be hurt. So there is a Batman urban legend. There is a Batman front, and there's a Bruce Wayne front, and then there's the real person. And we see a lot of the real person, even if what's most important to him is being Batman. In the Nolan films, we see a whole lot of, he's talking with Alfred. He is just Bruce Wayne. In the Matt Reeves version, it sure looks like he's going in without really having fleshed out for himself who is Bruce Wayne. He doesn't care or doesn't think he cares. He's got to have some reasons to take an interest. One, just so he won't go broke, and just burn through all the family's money. It's getting something that came out early in the 70s, I guess mid-70s. Len Wein introduced Lucius Fox originally as a financial manager to save Wayne, the enterprises and the company, the foundation, when Bruce Wayne had just blown through so much of the money that they were in danger.
Wow.
And so Lucius Fox was not originally introduced as Bruce's version of Q. Lucius was introduced to flesh out that side of Batman's life and really give that third leg to who he is, and dealing with the corporate side of it, which Bruce had just as soon sleep through the corporate meetings, but Lucius would be there to make him take an interest in that other part. And at some point, since one of the trailers does show, Alfred talking about how you're going to run out of all this money, and so they are clearly planning to address that somehow.
Yeah, that's I never considered that for this upcoming movie, so I can't wait to see how that plays out.
And it's not a spoiler when it's just speculation. There's trailers that are out there already.
Yeah, no, but I just never even thought about that aspect before.
It does seem too like they're going to be doing that with each of these characters, is taking something that's been done before, putting their own spin on it, but something that is new to the live action movies.
To the live action movies, something that's new about the Penguin is the Iceberg Lounge.
Yes.
Well, it's been in comics for nearly 20 years, not quite. Most people think it's been there even longer. It's like, no, it was introduced in the early 2000s. It was right after DC Stories did this 1-year jump. That's Infinite Crisis right after that. But when the Riddler became a detective for a while, and the Penguin got himself the Iceberg Lounge, which has been in cartoons and has been in the TV show Gotham, but has not been in the live action movies. And that gives this other side of the Penguin. That gives an aspect of him as how he's really involved as a person in this city. Because Tim Burton, he wasn't that interested in the Penguin. He's like, okay, here's this guy who wears a hat, dresses in a tuxedo. What else is there to him? And adding that Iceberg Lounge has added so much more to the character of the Penguin in the comics and other media. So we will get to see him as more of a person in this upcoming movie.
And there's
I'm
a
curious.
few things that I think are pulled from Gotham. Sorry about that, Garrett.
No, you go.
It reminded me of something that I fell off Gotham towards the end, but I really enjoyed the start of it. And their Iceberg Lounge and how they did Penguin, there could be some similarities there. But another similarity I'm hoping to see too is with Alfred. And I think with the casting of Andy Serkis as Alfred, we're gonna maybe get a bit more of that badass Alfred, who we're going to see him, his former military experience come into play a little bit, and maybe get him throwing some fists a little bit. What are there any other new takes I'm interested that to both of you that you're kind of hoping to see in this series?
Yeah, when they hired Andy Serkis, who like Sean Pertwee in Gotham, as an Alfred with a rougher voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there reflects something of the tone that they're doing. And they're not presenting him as having been quite as high class as some previous Alfreds have been, not a stiff upper lip kind of guy the same way. I mean, Michael Goff was great in the Burton movies. And that's when people think Alfred has always been incredibly sarcastic. No, that started with the version played by Michael Goff in the Burton movies. That Alfred had not been that sarcastic before that. And because it comes out of this place of love and concern and in one aspect of it, but also comes out of Alfred repeatedly asking himself, why the hell am I here and supporting this crazy thing he's doing? And so the Sean Pertwee version got to get into that a lot. The Andy Serkis version, I think, is going to get to that. More so than with Michael Caine, because Michael Caine, he's from a Cockney background, so there's always this underlying street something to Michael Caine, even when he's playing, he plays gangsters really well. I have trouble seeing Michael Goff as a gangster, even though I know he played gangsters. He played villains. He played a lot of villains in his younger days, but his version of Alfred makes it hard to see him that way. Michael Caine, yeah, he can be the friend who turns out to be the one stabbing you in the back. Sure, I would name some movies, but there's a spoiler on at least one where he did that to somebody.
He's got that. I always have an extra plan in the back of my mind. Garrett, what other new renditions are you hoping to see out of this movie?
I'm so surprised we haven't talked about this yet, but I'm so curious to see the Riddler and like the the Zodiac vibes that are going on there. That thing that's
like Saw vibes that I'm kind of getting.
Okay, then.
I see what you're saying, though. He's got the complicated plans. He has some kind of statement he wants to make, sticking it to people he thinks are too full of himself. So there's a similarity to Saw in that aspect of it. I don't think he's doing death traps that are quite as gruesome. I don't think it'll be quite torture porn, but so I can see what you're saying with the Saw. Yeah,
it's only PG-13, so probably not. But I think they're going to push some boundaries.
Yeah, Reef said outright they're pulling from Zodiac, but so you're looking at real life criminals who have taunted the police. And Zodiac is a good one to look at there because, the person is almost certainly dead. And two, since we don't know Zodiac's identity, we can talk about Zodiac without giving attention to some real SOB whose name doesn't deserve to be uttered. There's one. BTK is one I have to use as an example of somebody who sent messages to taunt the police. And I will mention the fact that his message sending got him caught, but I don't use his name. But we do know from some people such as him and hints we have with Zodiac that the kind of criminals who send those messages to taunt the police, we know they tend to be pretty egotistical, pretty full of themselves. They may be missing some healthy aspects of self-esteem, but they are genuinely full of themselves, not just pretending to be narcissistic. They really are. Zodiac's doing something about making his statements about corruption in Gotham, but his motive, Zodiac, Riddler is sending his messages, but his motives are not pure. It is not out of his concern for doing the better thing, or you'll find a different way of doing it. And that gets into one of the other issues that Reeves said they are absolutely getting into in this movie, is the issue of why Batman will not kill. And this is the angriest Batman, the one who's having the most trouble struggling with his violence. And so it's a great one for him to get into that issue of why he won't kill, why that is not his place. And so this version of the Riddler, with them taking a Batman who's more of a detective than before and having a greater struggle with his violence than before. So this Riddler, this cognitively oriented puzzler who is also doing some violent things, becomes a wonderful for counterplay with what they're doing with Batman in this one.
TJ.
Yeah, sorry. As the dog stuff continues, I try and keep muting in and out. And obviously, playing a character like that can affect your mental health. There's been lots of stories in the past as to how playing the Joker affected Heath Ledger's mental health.
And Nicholson had warned him.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Nicholson had a lot of trouble sleeping. He said he couldn't sleep when he was the Joker, and Ledger and he even told Ledger that.
And so, interestingly enough, that was almost the same quote that Paul Dano recently said about his experience prepping to play the Riddler. Was a long period of filming he wasn't sleeping. That comment did rub some of the people the wrong way, just because he played a slave owner in 12 Years a Slave, and so that just started a lot of dialogue of, all right, so you couldn't hear, but what about this? But I mean, I think that was a lot of context and perspective, and like obviously the question was about the Batman. So I'm interested, whether it be the Riddler and whether it be Joker or any villain, when someone has to get into the mind of these roles, in your professional opinion, how can that affect them? What would that be like?
Well, my closest firsthand experience on that is that after writing the Joker Psychology, I mean, it's an anthology, but I've written about 60% of the book. I either authored or co-authored a whole lot of what's in there. Some of the books I don't write as much, but that one I wrote a whole lot, and it's longer than Batman and Psychology. So I wrote a book's worth within there, but also needed other forensic experts and therapists and so forth. I wanted to have the things they would weigh in on. But after that book, I took a break. I had to. I had 5 years continuously working on those anthologies, and after the Joker Psychology, I had to completely take a break for a while. Wow. And then lockdown happened, so we have 2020 and 2021 without new books. But the earlier part of that was because I had to step back from it for a little bit because of how much time, not just the Joker, but with me, and I think this applies to how some of these guys are playing or directing these villains. I wasn't just looking at the comic books or the movies or the cartoons, or I was also looking at real life criminals. Because when I write these books, I'm immersing myself in the source material, to be sure. It's like, well, I need to go read some comic books now, but I'm also pulling plenty of things on real psychology and information on real individuals, looking at the real criminals, real victims, and it gets rough.
Yeah. We a couple weeks ago, we had the chance to talk with Nick Cregan, who plays Marcus Jet, who is the new version of the Joker on the Batwoman show. I don't know if you've been able to watch that at all.
I'm gonna binge it after the season's over. Their season finale is coming up this week.
Yeah. Well, we were able to talk to him, and that was one of the things I asked him, is kind of like, obviously there have been people who have gotten into this role in the past, and it's either gotten them in a bad place, or they're no longer with us, or what have you. And I asked him, do you feel that pressure when you know that you've accepted this role? And he completely surprised me, and he was like, I'm actually very centered within myself, and I do a lot of meditating and exercising and I go to a therapist and all this stuff. So I'm like very grounded in who I am. And I'm not ever afraid really of being taken into a bad place with this character, which I thought was very refreshing, because we all, we've all just heard like kind of horror stories in the past about getting yourself in that deep. And like you just said, you've experienced that and you even had to take a break. So
Yeah, there's variety to how people approach their acting. I mean, we've seen this with a number of depictions of the Joker where they're really getting into some of the things to be able to manifest certain aspects of it. Jared Leto took it to this other extreme. It was kind of theatrical in the extreme he was going into real life. It seemed a little more attention seeking than trying to get into the role. Like this crap with driving Margot Robbie nuts. I mean, she genuinely did not appreciate the things he was doing.
Yeah, he was like pranking
Ledger
them,
was
right?
not messing with other people.
Yeah.
He was not intruding on them. But I know people would ask Laurence Olivier, like, how do I get into this character? And he would say, just act. Just say the line. It's where or Alec Guinness had some kind of experience with somebody who was doing a bit more of a method acting sort of approach. And it's at one point, kind of for something related to that, he slapped Mark Hamill, telling him, snap out of it.
Yeah, it feels dangerous to take a method acting approach to like a psychopathic character like that. And it seems like the approach you should have going into it is more like, just act, just say the lines.
Well, when Mark Hamill plays the Joker, he's into the fun of his version of the Joker, and he doesn't usually have to get into, like, when he's doing something like The Killing Joke, he's getting into a different place.
Right.
But usually when he's playing the Joker, he's just getting into the twisted fun of it.
You know how I know this is going to be a great episode and a great primer is as I leave the frame to go deal with all of my dogs being crazy and getting out of the backyard and stuff. I forgot that I was even recording. I was just enjoying listening to the two of you go on in my headphones.
Yeah, we were just carrying on business as usual.
Yeah, exactly. That's fantastic. Continue. Don't let me intrude. Just...
Shall we talk about Catwoman?
Actually, you tried to bring her up earlier and then we veered into other people.
Yeah, we're just having a good conversation, but we'll try to veer back on track now. What's something new from this character in this upcoming rendition that we can expect?
I think she's going to be closer to the comic book version than we've seen in a movie before, because like the old Adam, we haven't had that many people play Selena Kyle on the big screen. We've really just we've had three, and each of them is only doing certain aspects of the character. The Julie Newmar version, she was just a psychopath like all the rest of them, willing to just murder Batman with no genuine interest in him. They were all killers, even though they didn't actually succeed at killing much at all. Usually not. There are like 7 deaths in the course of the whole Batman series. 2 gangsters shoot each other. Somebody gets thrown off a bridge. Molly, the Riddler's psychic, falls in an atomic thing. Maybe it's just those. It seemed like there was somebody else. In the Batman movie, there's at least one of the thugs who doesn't get. There's several thugs who don't get reintegrated after getting disintegrated. So they don't get reintegrated. Okay.
Interesting.
For that tangent of mine, I know, but anyway, there was this aspect where you didn't get into any greater depth with the version of the character back then. The Selena Kyle, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, great character for that movie. She stole the film, but that is absolutely not the comic book version. The comic book version is not the mousy secretary who then unleashes this other side from herself. Although it took decades for them to figure out who the comic book version was or what her background was, but from the 90s on, she's been this anti-hero who sometimes is further on the villain side and further on the hero side, but overall she's been this anti-hero looking out for the underprivileged. That's been there pretty consistently since the 90s. They finally found pretty well their rhythm with Catwoman then, and the Anne Hathaway version, she's not as heroic yet. She's little bit more Catwoman a little earlier, which he hasn't gotten to being as heroic. And the version that we see, played by Zoe Kravitz, she seems to have more social concern already. She seems to have a little more concern about looking out for others, as opposed to Hathaway kind of being in an earlier point in that arc. And this is one where you could believe the one played by Cameron on Gotham could potentially, oh, well, she doesn't look at all like her, but she, in terms of character, you believe the one that Cameron played in Gotham could potentially become this kind of individual. So I think this is going to be the one closest to the comic book version.
I'm excited. From everything I've seen in the trailers and the teasers, I've been blown away by how accurate it seems.
Catwoman helps complete something in Batman. She helps him because of her not just being there as one of the regular people. Okay, not the Julie Newmar version, but I don't know. You still saw some aspects of him with her, because he was genuinely attracted to Catwoman in the old series. Now, of course, when Eartha Kitt came along, being the 60s, they removed the sexual tension from the way they were playing the characters. But with the ones played by Julie Newmar and Lee Merriweather, he was genuinely attracted to her. He was genuinely interested in her. In Batman Returns, he's not even pretending to socialize like he did at the beginning of Batman. He's distant. He's there sitting in the dark until the bat signal comes on and brings him to life. And Selina helps him get back in touch with people again. With Batman Begins, it's kind of the other way around. She helps Bruce Wayne get back in touch with being Batman again.
Yeah.
And with this one, she seems to be playing a role in getting him interested in other aspects of what's going on with people besides just punching the bad guys.
And she's going to be doing that with, you brought up the attraction between the two of them and the necessity. That seems like it's going to be a focal point in this movie, and the chemistry between Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz, even just in the trailers, is intense. And the one was titled The Bat and the Cat.
I saw a picture the other day of them like on the red carpet, and they looked like literally like a panel out of a comic book, like Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle. It was wild.
Oh, that's cool.
It's going to be really exciting to get to see them bring this chemistry on screen. Another different thing I'm hoping to see out of this movie, and it's a bit of a prediction thing as well, we're speculating again.
Sure.
Will we see, I hope we don't personally, will we see Thomas and Martha Wayne die?
No.
Is it happening again?
I mean, they're gonna have to be pictures of Thomas and Martha. We've seen it so many times, and Reeves knows people joke about it.
Yeah, I think he said that he's not going to do it, right?
I think he said it, but
yeah, I think he did say that.
Or maybe I've just always been assuming he said it, but he had to have been asked. People had to have asked.
And I know it's been addressed, but I don't know if he outright said, like, I think he said, I know people are sick of it. And so whether it'll just be something about like a flashback of some pearls falling, but I hope it's just not even seen on screen at all.
No, there will have to be photos of his parents to personalize them as he torments over them. But from Keaton on, we've just repeatedly seen versions of this. It's like, because Keaton had it, Schumacher did it again in Batman Forever, and then they're not mentioned in Batman and Robin because he healed at the end of Batman Forever. So it's Batman and Robin is the one live action film from '89 on that doesn't refer to the murder of his parents.
I've got a quote from Matt Reeves.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
We've seen it so many times. It's been done too much. I knew we couldn't do that.
There we go. Matt Reeves. Shout out Garrett for finding that, and shout out Matt Reeves for putting that out for us to find comfort in.
Yeah, it's also been done in cartoons. I mean, we've seen them die more often than we've seen Uncle Ben.
That was what I was gonna ask. Who have we seen die more?
Yeah, we've live action. We've only seen Uncle Ben die twice.
It just felt like so much because it was so quick after.
Because they were so close together, yeah, and because they didn't let Martin Sheen say the line. He said it kind of, although we know from Andrew Garfield's more recent appearance, surely you know by now what happens in No Way Home, folks. We know Uncle Ben said with great power comes great responsibility, but Martin Sheen, as he played it in the Garfield movie, said, if you can do a thing, you should do it. It was a more messed up version of it. So I think that was also something that kind of nagged at us. Was now it's time for Uncle Ben to die again.
Again, exactly.
Honestly,
And-
we didn't see Uncle Ben get shot. It had just happened before Peter got there in the first movie. But we did see Ben die.
Yeah. That's close enough.
Yeah.
What
Close
else?
enough.
It got replayed in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
Because for some
With
reason,
Marco.
Sandman having been involved in that origin. And then randomly, the burglar who shot Uncle Ben, not the one you thought from the first movie, not only is it somebody else, it's a guy who gets superpowers.
Yeah.
It's and so the scene that got replayed, it had just been replayed in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a very good point. The audacity of this little guy on my lap to have me running around as he escapes the backyard, and then as soon as he's back in, sits down beside me, starts licking my face like nothing happened.
Casual.
Unbelievable. You mentioned
He's
something.
into the conversation.
He
Yeah.
is. He usually only comes in for our Star Wars conversation. His name is Obi-Wan, but I guess he's interested in the Batman stuff too.
He heard me mention Alec Guinness earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's it.
And something you mentioned that Batman and Robin did well was not mention Thompson Wayne's death. They've already been confirmed to be working on a sequel for this movie, and something that Robert Pattinson has said he'd like to see in the sequel is a more age-appropriate Robin being brought into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know two things. What would you like to see from Robin if he's brought in this rendition? But also, what do you think, as a psychologist, is Batman's obsession with bringing in a child to be his sidekick?
Now, as usually written, Batman doesn't bring in the kid. As usually
I guess
written,
the kid tries to bring him in.
yeah, as
get
usual.
in, yeah.
Now there are plenty of versions where Batman recruits somebody, like Frank Miller did one where he abducts this kid who just lost his parents and so forth. But as usually written, it's the kids who show up and want to get involved in what's going on. And Batman initially says no, although he thinks no all of 8 seconds with Dick Grayson. Then he thinks back to when his parents too were murdered. But Dick Grayson wants to go to the police, and Batman's warning, you'll be dead by morning if you go to the police in this town. And it's like, I'm going to get involved in this. And Batman sees this kid who already has some ability and is going to do something that will get himself killed if Batman doesn't give him some guidance. We have 2 main versions of Jason Todd. The first version of Jason Todd was a carbon copy of Dick Grayson. His parents were also circus acrobats who got killed by a gangster. And in fact, the first time Batman met him, he was in a Robin costume. He got introduced through Dick Grayson, and his parent and their Croc was making trouble. In fact, he was in that Robin costume before he found out his parents died. And then he dies, he jumps out, and Bruce and Batman has this flashback to seeing the younger Robin. Jason number 2 is different because he was just stealing the hubcaps off the Batmobile because the security on the Batmobile was getting worked on that week. A later writer threw that in. How did you steal hubcaps off the Batmobile? So here's a kid, and Batman takes him off to the kids' home, but the kid leaves. And seeks out Bruce Wayne, and he keeps seeking him out. And it's like, he wants to be Robin. No, he wants to be Robin. No, he's okay. And it's like, he's going to get himself in more trouble if I don't. I can keep going through this list as we go where it's back to him having 5 official Robins, because now they finally said, yes, Stephanie's time as Robin really happened. And then there's his son who, he didn't pick. The kid just showed up. In fact, that kid became Robin while Bruce was supposedly dead. So all 5 of them, these are kids who already had skills, who already had interest in fighting crime. Although I love Stephanie's motivation more than anybody else. It was adolescent rebellion against her criminal dad. And so they needed guidance And so, yeah, although, yeah, there are probably plenty of other kids who could use guidance. And why does he keep keeping these who look just like himself when his parents got killed?
Exclusive little club. All right, I got a question for you. Out of all the live action Batmen, if they were to like fight each other, who would be the most triumphant? Who would come out triumphant?
If they would fight each other.
I think it's
Like,
got to be
who's-
Batfleck, because he was the one who was like, yeah, I'm killing people now. I'm done with this.
Although he stopped.
True, but like he had some ruthless in him.
You don't catch him in the time of murder. You catch him in the time outside of murder.
Well, one thing is that when he's when he's murdering Batman, he's a little more reckless and he's letting his emotions guide him a bit more. I think that Keaton Batman could outsmart him. Even though I said he's not as smart as I want to see in a Batman, none of them are. Like Keaton Batman's pretty smart. Not the sciencey kind of smart you get with the Kilmer version or so forth. And the Adam West Batman, no, I say he, of course, in his story, but no, he's not quite fit enough.
I'm taking Batfleck. He's the only live action one we've seen go toe to toe with Superman.
I think Keaton could outsmart him.
Okay, so we're going Keaton.
I think.
Are we not including Robert Pattinson in this since we haven't seen the full set of his abilities?
He's not capable yet.
Okay.
He's too early in his career. He hasn't fully fleshed out who he is, what he's doing as Batman. No. Also, hey, the Keaton version killed.
Did he?
The Keaton version of Batman was a killer also. That wasn't the big controversy, but it's like, he only kills one in the second movie. In Batman Returns, he takes the dynamite, puts it on one of Penguin's thugs, shoves him off to blow up. He outright
he didn't die.
Yeah, I mean, that was not in the script, but Burton just decided we're going to do this. So Keaton's Batman would kill too. But I don't think that. I think Affleck would be the only one who'd be interested in killing other Batmen. Keaton, even Keaton would be interested in stopping that idiot. That's another thing. The Affleck version, on the lack of smarts, he's so easily manipulated by Lex. Admittedly, it takes 14 bizarre coincidences and weird choices for people along the way for that story to happen the way it does. A whole lot of it is, why did they do that? Because plot. Why did they do that? Because plot. How did Lex know that? Because plot. Affleck was incredibly easily manipulated. And
that's a good point.
I think that is a huge advantage several of the other Batmen would have over him, but I think Keaton's, again, you don't see a lot of long-term strategy with live action Batman. The more so with Affleck, and it goes into some of the problem we have on why we don't trust a proactive superhero. Most superheroes are reactive. Villain does thing, they go and get involved in what the villain is doing. The proactive superhero, we don't trust them. They're taking action to keep things from happening in the future, but then they start seeming like these fascist jerks who are just taking control. Have you watched The Boys? This does not tend to go well.
So are you Team Iron Man or Team Cap?
I like they both make wonderful case. I'm Team Cap.
I'm not shocked. That's wow. So Keaton's about to come back.
He is. So I'm looking forward to this.
The conclusion we're coming to is Batfleck has the lead and he's about to dish the final blow, but then Keaton tells him that his mother's name is also Martha. And because of that, Keaton comes out with the victory.
As silly as that Martha moment is, and it is a silly moment. When you got to think, looking at the story for I've done a little bit of ragging on Batman v Superman, but in terms of real human nature, like if somebody loses their way, they lose track of, they lose their sense of who they are, like somebody who's so enraged by what's going on, they're taking things out on someone. It's like a very good person could do horrible things, like if something terrible has just happened. sometimes it takes something as simple as a name to make us do a double take and have this moment of clarity. So it's a silly moment, and yet oddly enough, it's more true to human psychology than a lot of other stuff in that film.
It's a very interesting point. It's like it made sense, but also the fact that the turn of the plot seemed to ride on it was just like it didn't
The
have
whole
to be
plot
that
relies
moment.
on this coincidence, and Superman, for some reason, calling his mom Martha at that moment.
Yeah. We don't let's not read into it too much. We'll
Yeah,
just leave it with
that's coincidence number 15 that the plot requires. 14 that it takes to get them to that point, and one kind of two coincidences. One is that their moms have the same name. Now that's always been in the comics. Martha and Mary, versions of that were really popular around that time. And then the other coincidence is Superman saying it at the right time.
yeah, the perfect time.
The perfect time.
Again, let's not read into it too much.
We can maybe have a Snyderverse breakdown on another pod, but instead of that, what I want to ask you is another potential sequel thing on top of the Robin. This quote came from Matt Reeves, not Robert Pattinson, but he said he'd be interested in exploring Mr. Freeze in the sequel. What do you think of that idea? And what's your thoughts on Freeze as a character? And what would you like to see out of Victor Freeze in live action in non-Schwarzenegger mode?
Oh, the Schwarzenegger thing. Now, admittedly, Mr. Freeze had not been a complex character for very long, but they drew so heavily from the Heart of Ice story that it then seems even more bizarre what they came up with. It's like casting him as Arnold. Arnold is a colorful guy. Arnold brings this enthusiasm. Mr. Freeze, it's part of his personality that he's this cold, aloof guy who, in his own personality, who he got humanized through the love of this woman. And that is such an important part of the story, which was not there before Batman the Animated Series. That had not always been in his history. He barely appeared. I think he appeared once, maybe a little more than that, but not much before the Batman TV series that Adam West was in. He was introduced as Mr. Zero, got renamed Mr. Freeze for the Adam West show, played by 3 different guys. But not until Paul Dini gives him the name Victor Freeze, the sillier name Victor Freeze, as opposed to when he'd been Dr. Shivel once upon a time. But he'd gone from being this 2-dimensional character, this guy who has to keep his body temperature cold and walks around with a freeze gun. Except for the body temperature thing, it's Captain Cold, but he's got to have the fish helmet to keep him cold. But Batman the Animated Series, with this Emmy Award-winning episode, turned him into the most poignant character out of them all. He's not somebody who is out for the sadistic kicks. He is not somebody who is, trying to stir up chaos. He is somebody who is angry at some corporate individuals who have interfered with some of what he thinks would save his wife. But he is motivated so much by trying to restore Nora. And it is a wonderful story when told right. The Sub-Zero animated movie gave a very nice coda to what they'd set up there, where Nora got saved and Mr. Freeze let it, but it showed that he genuinely loved her. It was not just that he was objectifying her, which had often seemed the case, that he was going to let the world think he was dead. He cried his cold, icy tear and seeing the news that she'd been restored and headed off to live with the polar bears. And it was a really nice moment. I love that story. Being done in live action will be tricky. And what else are you doing with the story? What do you want to do with Mr. Freeze? Will he be, it's going to be a Freeze themed, assassin? Will he be this cold? Will he be like the Iceman, not an Iceman of Marvel Comics, but the Hitman who was called the Iceman, who he's a cold SOB too. Do we say son of a bitch on this show?
It's
we
fine.
do now.
Oh, okay.
As
I
long
was
as
gonna-
kidding.
well, it said
Yeah.
SOB twice. Like, does he just use child versions of words?
You know what? Like in the past, we've typically said like try and avoid F-bombs, and even if it happens, we can bleep it out because we were directed to stay like family friendly and such. But as of about a week ago, we're fully independent and running on our own now, and so we can do whatever the heck we want, really.
Whatever the heck. All right.
Yeah,
the hell
no,
we
you
want.
said I was gonna say, you set a real good precedent there.
I'm used to the censoring. I'm also a teacher, like I'm used to when I'm in the mode.
The mode.
Yeah. The
We've
filter
done
stays
a
on.
pretty good job of it, to be honest with you, because when the recording stops, we're like, we let loose and we're like, that was a really good freaking episode.
Except for when we have British guests, then it doesn't. Then it just.
It's
all
hard
hell
to
breaks
keep them
loose.
and contained, so they just.
Yeah.
Well, it has a different context, different personal. Even if it's literally the same definition, it's got different meaning culturally and socially. For a lot of words, there's some words that are stronger for them. And where it's like, one of us might quote one of them, you call it something bloody. It's like, that's a stronger, although not as much as it used to be, but that's stronger than it sounds like to us. Whereas, where F bombs or C bombs or, it's, some of the others, which like, man, I was like, we're not saying that.
So
Now we veered into this tangent, but welcome to this new show where you say, hey, they're free to say all these words and they're still talking the same way.
And they're still and they're still not doing it.
We'll figure it out eventually, guys.
we're coming into our own, and I want to pitch a sequel idea to you. We get Freeze, and him and Batman are starting out as combatants, and along the way, Batman decides to help him because he learns of his attentions. And that's when we get the larger antagonist messing things up, interfering, and maybe leading to the death of Nora, so she is not saved, and turning Freeze over the edge, further complicating things for Batman, was when the Joker is brought in. What do you two think of my pitch?
It all depends on delivery. It's I mean, sure, of course it can be done. It all depends on delivery and what you're doing with these. One thing about the Joker is he is such he's such a strong character. He is such a force of chaos that it's hard to put him with anybody else.
That's why I almost like the contrast of the stoic nature of Victor Freeze and having him be very cold, having him be someone whose emotions are aiding the plot, but not necessarily his dialogue, and make him be a character that on his own wouldn't be able to, a very intriguing line, but wouldn't be able to carry. And then you have the Joker completely counteracting that.
Yeah, Mr. Freeze is one that once you get into the more real world or more serious live action, it's a little hard to decide, okay, well, what do you do about his freeze ray? That's just silly. There's other stuff you can do. You could have the cryogenics expert or other cryonics expert, who has things he do. It's like you can use liquid helium to break things. You can use liquid helium to kill people, or liquid nitrogen. Sorry, use liquid nitrogen to do some very bizarre things. You could have some freeze related crimes. So it all depends on story. And for him to be thinking about Mr. Freeze suggests that he does already have an idea on what he would like to do with him. So I would love to see it. Like, I would love to have seen a Nolan Riddler, because of him going ahead and deciding to end the series with The Dark Knight Rises. After Ledger's death, he didn't have his next story, so he jumped ahead to the end of Batman's career. And so there's all kinds of stuff. It feels like we just missed out on what should have been a lot of other career along the way. And I think Nolan would have given us a fascinating Riddler. Not the one Matt Reeves is giving us, but I think he would have given us a fascinating Riddler.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, though, I'm glad that we got to talk about Mr. Freeze with you, because early on in your book, there's a case study. I believe it's right after the case study on King Tut. It's
Yeah,
pretty early
it's
on in
right
your
after
book.
it's right after the case study on King Tut.
And that like really drew me in, and that's when I started to kind of pick it up. I've been reading it on my phone via the email, so it's like I have to kind of like do it. But I was kind of picking it up here and there, and then once I got to that part, I was picking it up every night, every morning, like when I could. So that the case study on Mr. Freeze was really what like sucked me in to A Dark and Stormy Night.
Yeah, the majority of chapters at the end of them have these short case studies on specific villains. And because sometimes the trick is, what am I saying with this villain that I'm not saying with others? You can talk over and over about the meaning of psychopath, but okay, but what's specific to this villain? And those two, I think, gave a good contrast. It's there at the end of the Witch Batman chapter, going through different versions of media. Yeah, I do King Tut, which it seems like a goofy one to lead off with,
which I had never heard of, and I learned about via this case study
from the old Adam West show. Yeah, because that version of King Tut was owned by the producers on the Adam West show, so you've never really seen him redone. You've seen a King Tut in some Batman comics, you've seen a King Tut in another cartoon, but never exactly that depiction. Until he showed up at the beginning of the last time Adam West played Batman was in Batman versus Two-Face, when Harvey Dent is taking King Tut to court.
Wow.
And so he got revisited there. So I do an analysis of him. It's like, which kind of dissociative disorder, as we look at them, would fit the way they played that character? And then I go into the more poignant character of Mr. Freeze. And those two, as I'm talking about the Adam West show, Mr. Freeze, I mentioned stuff from the comics, but that's that Batman the Animated Series version that is so much what we really talk about. He has become the frame of reference for any depiction of Mr. Freeze ever since, whether we're talking about the Harley Quinn cartoon or other comics, or even Batman and Robin, which drew heavily from it, despite what they did with it. And then we go into one on the Riddler. Well, plenty of things I can say about the Riddler that don't apply to others. And the Penguin, a little bit more in the Napoleon complex, though I've talked about that in a bunch of interviews. Harley is one where I had a bunch of new stuff to say about her in the new edition. Although I say a lot about her in the Joker book, in the Joker Psychology, Evil Clowns and the Women Who Love Them. It's I had quite a bit, but I still had some newer things I wanted to say about Harley, because back when I did the first edition, we didn't talk about the gaslighting the same way we do now. And so I had to talk about gaslighting. And we also had not seen Margot Robbie playing the live action Harley back then. And that's what a lot of people know her through, is Margot's portrayal. And what we know
also
from
the addition of the new hit animated show with Harley.
Yes. And that one is, I love that one. And I there's a lot of fun stuff. It throws me a little bit getting into Kaylee Cuoco doing her with nothing resembling the Brooklyn accent, but it's like, okay, that's a superficial thing. And she gets into some weird humor, some bizarre stuff going on, but they also get into some really good character analysis in that show, like when she revisits her own origin, and she takes Adam Glass wrote her version of the origin for the New 52, taking the Paul Dini version, not Paul Dini version, the Mad Love version, sorry. That was Paul Dini. He took the Mad Love version of her origin, but he took some of her agency out of it when he adapted her origin for the New 52. He made a bit more that the Joker had the initiative in deciding what she ought to do. And then the film The Suicide Squad gave her a little more choice in it, but they still had robbed her of some of her agency. And then the Harley Quinn cartoon, there's this wonderful episode in which she's thinking that the Joker threw her into the vat of acid, which I still don't think she ever needed to be thrown in the vat of acid. She was just fine before they got put in her origin. But she had been thinking that the Joker was in charge, But then she revisited her own memory and realized, no, she had agency. She was the one who had decided to do what she did. And when she finally tells the Joker, my origin was not when I became the villain. My origin moment was when I left you. And that is Harley as we love her the most. We love her post Joker. In the comic book, she has almost always been post Joker.
Yeah, she's
And
definitely much better post Joker.
I agree, 100%. That is the best version of her. And you've mentioned, oh, sorry, continue.
Well, so she is the person who has been in a bad place, who has been manipulated by the wrong guy, and still has plenty of work to do on herself, but she overcame some of that. And it is a hopeful message. And in the Joker book, the last chapter is on therapy. Which types of therapy? Would this type of therapy work for the Joker? And then the therapist who weighed in on this no. Would this type work for him? No. With this one, no, that one would make him worse. It's like, well, what about Harley? And then we go through, yeah, when she's in a place where she wants to. Of course, therapists often make the worst therapy patients because they know so much. But if she's ready to work on these things, some of these could be useful for her. And it gave me something a little more upbeat to finish the book up with too.
And so you had mentioned these different character analyses you've done on various characters. Obviously, Batman seems to be your go-to, your number one. Whether it's saying it at birth or at the multiple books, analyzing the villains. My first word was juice. So kind of cool, but not as cool.
Can you say that one more time?
My first word was juice.
Juice.
Hey, a good practical word.
Yeah, that's
like,
strong.
I love a nice cold glass of juice. That's great.
Strong. It could honestly, there's so many worse options than that.
For sure. But it's not Batman.
My first wasn't Batman, but it's real early in that. It's two different places in the baby book identify exactly when that was.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I think my first pop culture related one would have been Buzz.
Yeah.
Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
I always use I had two older sisters. They made me cardboard wings and like with duct tape, and I used to jump off of the. Honestly, it may have been this couch that I'm sitting on. Like,
I was wondering what you were jumping off of. He's like, you're not gonna say the roof, is he?
No, it's like this is a really old
sisters
couch.
let you jump off the roof with cardboard wings that they built for you. It'll be good, man. You'll fly.
I really believed in Buzz, and so I thought I could fly.
See, I was a Woody guy,
just like him. You were a Woody guy.
I was a Woody guy. Yeah, I had a Woody like doll. That's funny.
Yeah. Look at that. We're just a pair.
I know. We are.
And so, anyways, you had mentioned that while Batman's your number one, you've done some other character analysis as well, whether it be in a book or elsewhere. What are some other ones you've done? And if you were to, what's upcoming? I was going to ask you if you were going to pick a Marvel one, what would it be? But you had mentioned before we started recording that there might be something like that upcoming.
Well, I've done 3 Marvel books and 3 DC books. So I mean, like I said, half the books are on other things like Star Wars, Walking Dead, Doctor Who, and I would like to do a new edition of the Doctor Who book for the 60th anniversary. But the 3 DC books are Wonder Woman, Batman, and the Joker, and the 3 Marvel books are Daredevil, Black Panther, and Captain America versus Iron Man. So those are the ones we've already done, and right now we're wrapping up work on Stranger Things Psychology, Life Upside Down.
Love that title.
And then cool. the next one we plan to work on is a Marvel character. And well, it's like I don't like to announce a book before the publisher does. Although I technically just did with the Stranger Things book, but as long as I'm not saying it in writing, it's people have to, if you've stuck with us through this much of the interview, you deserve to know. Hey, look for Stranger Things Psychology, Life Upside Down this summer.
So what you're saying is you don't want us to clip that.
Hey, I'll talk about superheroes I would love to talk about though. So yeah, it could be buried in here somewhere. So yeah. I was like, I would love to do a Superman book. There are all kinds of other characters I would particularly like to do. I wish I could have figured out the right way to do an Arrowverse book, and the biggest issue on that is title. What do you call it? You don't call it Arrowverse Psychology. That's a little weird, and I'm not even completely sure. They probably trademarked trademarked that word Arrowverse by now. And it's when you're using something that's a nickname, if it's not the actual name of the characters, it's a little harder to get away with using it in your title. The title sometimes, like I've got two ideas on another Batman related book. And one of them, and I really love the idea, but the title is going to be a hard one to, let's say this is not it. Let's say it was, let's do a book on the police in Gotham, although I like that idea. Let's do a book about what do you call it? Gotham police psychology. Well, that's not going to, that's going to be one where not enough people will get the attention unless they're just doing it because they know I did the Batman psychology book. It would be, if we're suddenly a successful film or series, Gotham Central, then there could be a way that it could go. So if that's not the one of the two examples, but I'm just using
Gotham City and Psychology, correlation versus corruption.
And there's a lot you could say right there. But of course, Gotham City is also a nickname for New York. That's where it originated, as a nickname for New York. And so sometimes the title could be, say you wanted to do one on, I would love to do one on the most psychotic but least known supervillains. It's like, how are you going to get a publisher to really go for that? It's like, we want to do, things like, I want to analyze, although Arm Fall Out Boy now is known because of the Suicide Squad, or Arm Fall Off Boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe the character, although he's called something else there, but he's actually
the detachable man, I think, something like that.
But there he is. It's like, there's Arm Fall Off Boy. Wow.
Any character you want brought to live action at this point, just reach out to James Gunn. And
he's
might be able
pulling
to get
deep in his bag of tricks.
What's the dog stapler, dog nailer?
The dog nailer? I hate that.
It's this character whose theme was to nail dead dogs to villains, and my son Alex would know what it was, a dog stapler, a dog nailer, something like that.
That's horrendous.
See right there, it's like you can have fun talking about characters like that, but for a publisher to see a way to sell it is the trick.
Yeah.
Well, a fun one that you may be able to pull a publisher on now would be Peacemaker, just based on how much it's been viewed and how much it's been talked about.
And then what's the longevity of it? That'll matter too. What do we want to say about it? There's some things that would be so much fun to write about, but it's like, do I have something new and different to say psychologically about this?
And on Peacemaker 2, it would almost have to be a short story, just because James Gunn almost just did say everything that needed to be said about his psyche in season 1 of the show.
But there is a season 2 coming.
Exactly.
And I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. I love the heck
I'm
out
wondering
of that show.
what will they do with the dance number in season 2?
A new dance number, maybe?
Well, there'll be some difference in the characters. Although apparently you can be dead and still be sticking around, as we see from the last shot of the last episode. And I'm not going to be more explicit than that for those of you who haven't seen Peacemaker. We take it for granted you've seen like Spider-Man No Way Home. That would be a great one for me to write about. I kind of wish I'd had a Spider-Man book out before that movie came out, but that does show there's so much interest in Spider-Man right now. Yeah. There's some, and people want to see Andrew Garfield Spider-Man again.
Yes, we do.
Let him be the Spider-Man of Venom's world. It would even let this weird thing in the Morbius trailer make sense if it's that world.
So yeah, you may have to become a more frequent guest on the pod, because Andrew Garfield in the Venomverse, like, that's something we've pitched on here as well. And on top of that, I'm just thinking about how I got so excited about that it just blew my train.
Blew the train off the tracks.
I don't even remember where I was originally going with that. It was something you referenced, something else that we had talked about on the podcast as well. So maybe just continue on your
Peacemaker, Judo Master, maybe.
Yes, that was it. So our listeners,
see, look at that.
This is why we're a pair.
I'm in your head, bro. I got you.
I go dig up the old Charlton comics. Let's find out what happened with Judo Master in the original stories, or Judo Master's few appearances in DC stuff.
Exactly. And so whether it is pulling something out of my brain like Judo Master or pulling up Matt Reeves' quote earlier, Garrett has come up clutch today. I was going to say, we don't really have to worry about our listeners and the Peacemaker spoilers. Most of them will probably have seen it because we've been covering a lot of Peacemaker content as well. We interviewed Na Lee, who plays Judo Master.
Yeah.
I got to do an interview as well with Chukwudi Iwuji, who plays Clemson Mern and is going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as well. So we've been firing out a lot of Peacemaker content. So most of our listeners should be up to date on it.
So one thing about Peacemaker, filling a book, because you're filling a book, you got to have a bunch of different topics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, if you could now do a Suicide Squad psychology book and absolutely have some stuff on Peacemaker, you could talk about the Peacemaker series, because even though that's not the Suicide, not only is he in this last Suicide Squad movie, but Amanda Waller is part of the story of what's going on with Peacemaker. It's still an extension of Suicide Squad. It's like, all right, she's got her regular Suicide Squad, but then here she has her little branch office going on out of Peacemaker's trailer, or they're thrown together HQ.
Yeah, I can see how it would be tough to fill a 400-page book on one season of Peacemaker. But
on the Suicide Squad as a whole, though, it would be an interesting one to do a big feature on Amanda Waller, small one each on Peacemaker and the rest of them. That would be cool.
Yeah, and with the comic books, you've got a whole history of different villains that have been in there, and to me, it's important to go into the comics, use them. Don't just use the better known film. It's, and of course, you still have to remember, most of the audience is going to know the better known film far more than they would any particular comic book. So don't assume they know the comic book you want to talk about to make your point. But to me, it's very important to bring that in. Like when we did Daredevil Psychology, The Devil You Know. I found out that's an anthology, and a bunch of different other people are contributing to it. And I turned out partway along the way that not enough of them knew the comics. They knew the Netflix show, but it's like, I don't want a book on just the Netflix show. It will not have as much longevity as if we're talking about the comics. It'll seem shallow to those of us who know the comics and know the variety of what's going on with that character in his history. And because that was the second book where Stan Lee did the book forward for me. Stan Lee did the forward for Captain America versus Iron Man, and then he did it again for Daredevil Psychology. My Black Panther book was the first one that did not have Stan working with us. Don McGregor, who created Killmonger, he wrote the forward for that one. So that was still pretty cool. But Stan Lee, who is known as, he's Stanley Martin Lieber, you may have heard of him. And Michael Uslan, producer of the Batman movies. Those are the only two people who've done forwards in two of my books.
I enjoyed reading
two people to have.
Yeah,
and Michael tells me I've got to do a third Batman related book so he can complete a trilogy.
Well,
and then he'd outnumber
Stan.
Stan.
Batman Beyond content. We want some more Batman Beyond content.
There's definitely stuff worth talking about with Batman Beyond. A lot worth talking about with Batman Beyond, because it's not as well known as Batman the Animated Series. It's more limited in what it says about Bruce Wayne himself. It says some important things about Bruce Wayne, but it is more limited in what it says about him. So in terms of, I would love to have said more about Batman Mask of the Phantasm. I would love to have said more about that. But then when I was getting into it, it's like, I don't have something to say about it that doesn't come up somewhere else. So I even though I really wanted to say at least a page more about Batman Mask of the Phantasm in this second edition, I still didn't. It's always this, what's the topic that's interesting to me? In terms of, I want to stay on this topic for a while, because once you decide to do it, it's going to be in your head for a while. That I think I can say something about real human nature, a variety of things about real psychology. And then for me, third is that the publisher is willing to print.
Yeah.
The publisher, of course, that's number one, but
arguably the most important.
There are ideas that the publishers brought up where I would be sometimes responding, here's why I don't think that will work. And of course, I really want to make the point to them very strongly. So, because part of me thinks I don't want them to go talk somebody else into doing that book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course.
And so one of the last things I want to touch on with you, because it's a great interest to me as a teacher,
Mhm.
is what led to you wanting to use superheroes and comics in your teachings as a professor, as a psychologist. My highest mark I ever got on a university class was in a educational curriculum class for how to teach social studies and history. And the best mark I got was on an assignment where we basically got to choose anything, a list of topics of teaching styles, as long as we could relate it to a curriculum here in our province of Canada. And so I decided to do grade 11 history using cartoons and comic books with Captain America to teach World War II.
Okay.
And ever since then, I've just been drawn to using that because I realized that, oh, if this interests me so much, this is also going to draw in a lot of kids. And ever since then, we've been doing where you do a unit on representation, and we watch Black Panther and talk about other things. When we're talking about mental health and racism, we watch some stuff from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. When we're teaching, when we're talking about colonization, we reference Frozen 2. And I love using all of these different stories that are fresh in kids' minds to connect them to critically thinking about these topics. What drove you to wanting to use superheroes in your psychology?
Yeah, in fact, no, of course, first, I've gotten asked that one so many times. I caution a lot of interviewers later, don't lead with that question. Coming up here at the end, sure. And you've got your own personal perspective, and that changes it too. But I've cautioned a number of interviewers later, don't lead with this question, because you don't want somebody coming in thinking they're hearing the same dadgum interview they've heard with me before. And I think we've done plenty of stuff different, especially much time as we've been talking about the Reeves, Matt Reeves stuff. I was born a nerdy child. No, what year would it have been? In 2007. Okay. And there are reasons I know it was 2007. I was teaching a psychology and literature class. The person who used to teach it had retired, and we had not offered it in a while. So we wouldn't have offered it in about 8 years at that point, because he retired back in 99. So it had not been offered in 8 years. And the department chair and I were talking about, there's some classes we should remove from the list altogether because they're not getting taught anymore. I was like, well, I would like to give Psych and Lit a try. I'll do it differently from how my predecessor did, because traditionally psychology and literature classes are very heavily at taking something like a Jungian and Freudian perspective and looking at the underlying psychological themes and so forth. But I was thinking is that we could do so much more than that. We can use these stories to talk about absolutely any topic in psychology. And what I found over the course of that, I think it might have been a summer class. It wasn't even a semester. It was 5 weeks. And what I found over the course of that class was that the students learned a lot more psychology than they or I had anticipated. Going through and looking at, the short story Memento Mori by Jonathan Nolan that became the movie Memento, directed by his brother, that Christopher Nolan guy we've been talking about. And reading that short story, it gave us things to talk about: memory, how memory works, how anterograde amnesia works, and we would talk about the psychology of real human beings while looking at this fictional story. If somebody approaches a book titled Batman in Psychology, they're interested in Batman first. Almost always, they're interested in Batman first. But as we're taking the psychology look at Batman, we're also using Batman to talk about psychology, using the fiction to talk about real human nature. And so over the course of those 5 weeks, I found this is a really powerful tool. We use examples all the time. We use examples when we teach constantly. And we can't assume that any individual necessarily knows a specific story. When you're talking about Frozen 2, you still have to explain some things for the people in the room who haven't seen it. But they're still with you in a different way than when you're talking about a random real person. They just feel more left out in terms of knowledge or familiarity. And there's something more vague when you're talking about a random real person, which we have to do. than when you're referring to the character in Frozen.
Weirdly enough, Frozen 2 is probably my favorite teaching resource that I've come across, because I live in Canada. And so much of our history is based on the history of treaties between the colonizers and the indigenous people. And it was based on how one party had intended on a partnership for mutual growth and benefit, and the other partnership feared the other one and wanted to impose their own will and went in with not so great intentions. And there were so many miscommunications, and the history was taught throughout generations one way of, this is how we live in Arendelle. We live in Canada. It's great. Canada was the peacekeeper that helped in every single war. And we did all these great things. We're the nice little brother that every other country loves, not being taught our own history of residential schools and colonization in Canada that was truly terrible to what happened to the indigenous people. And so Frozen 2 is my favorite way to teach it, because not only does it teach colonization, but it teaches reconciliation as well. Of, they learned this terrible past of their kingdom. They could just wallow in shame and try and deny and act like it didn't happen and it's not their fault. They have no, even though they have power, they have no responsibility to do anything about it. And it shows them the proper path of, okay, we can move forward.
I think Frozen 2 is indirectly responsible for the dedication in the second edition of my Batman book. So the dedication, I'm not, I do second editions in the future. I'm not necessarily going to change it from the first edition, but the second edition says to Spencer, who at age 3 said, I need to go save the world, and assured me, yes, you can help. And it was, so we got this 3-year-old in the family, and out of the blue, he said this thing about, I need to go save the world. I got my camera going. I did not want to ask him a leading question, so I just asked, what do you need to do? And I had to hope he would repeat what he just said. And he said, I need to go save the world. Can I help? Yes, you can. I mean, this world. And then he'd been on a kick. You know how a 3-year-old will watch the same film over and over. And he'd been on a Frozen 2 kick. That was one of the things in his very short rotation. He had Frozen 2 weeks. And so one time when I was watching it with him, I heard they used this phrase about they were going to, they specifically said they had to go save the world. That's in there somewhere in Frozen 2. It's like, I think that's where he picked this up, because everyone, where in the world does a 3-year-old out of the blue say, I need to go save the world? What does he even think that means? I don't know.
Yeah.
Hot take,
no way he
Frozen
can
2
understand the stakes of this.
Better than the original. That's my hot take. But you're talking about how 3-year-olds just watch the same movie over and over again. I still do that. I've watched Tick, Tick, Boom 3 times in the last week and a half.
I'm going to watch it during spring break. That'll be a couple weeks. I don't know why. I think I do know why. I think it's because my wife will want to watch that one. So it's because next week I'm gonna be very Batman focused. There's this book just out and this movie coming out, and I'm delivering manuscript to the publisher on the next book, Stranger Things Psychology, and dealing with the plan for the one after that, that may or may not involve some character that we've named somewhere in this episode.
And that's a kind of a perfect note. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an absolute blast, not only as comic book fans like we are, but huge psychology fans as well. And so this has been an absolute blast, and open welcome to come back and hang out anytime.
All right. Well, this has been fun. I appreciate it.
And congrats on the second edition of your book being released, and everybody go out and check it out. It was an illuminating read for me, and it's a perfect way to kind of ramp up your hype for the Batman movie.
Last thing to close on, pitch all of our subscribers right now why they have to buy Batman and Psychology and where they can find it.
You love Batman. You're interested in human nature. You will love Batman in Psychology, A Dark and Stormy Night, the best book on Batman ever written by me, as previously mentioned. It's at Amazon. Barnes and Noble has placed a huge order because I know Barnes and Noble sold half the copies of the first edition.
That's awesome.
So you can wherever finer books are sold, but I know Amazon and Barnes and Noble will be where the majority of people will get these. So they're easy to get. I see that right now it says like there's a 1 day delay. It's only a 1 day delay, but that means Amazon already you had people take the first batch that they had, and that's
exciting.
fun and wonderful to see. And the hardcover, since this time they're releasing a hardcover at the same time as the paperback, and the hardcover has been doing surprisingly well, surprisingly to me in the pre-orders, because it's like 35 36 as opposed to the hardcover, which is 22, or with Amazon discount less than that. But I'm still gonna have more things to say about Batman. It's one, people ask me about Batman and all the dadgum time, and I love these characters and all these stories. I love thinking about what brings out the best in people, what brings out the worst in people, and what kind of message there is about real human nature within these stories. And out of the 13 books I've done, or 15 if we count them a certain way, well, do you count the second edition of a book twice? Do we count an instructor's manual I wrote for a publisher once? So, but out of all the books I've ever done, people still ask me more about Batman than any other book I've ever worked on. I still get interviewed about that more than all the rest of it put together. And it is fun. It's an honor to, in a weird way, to have some tiny little place in Batman history.
I think you
Big
have
time.
I mean, you have forwards written by Stanley and Michael Uslan, and and both of your Batman books. He's written the forward, and he's executive produced every single live action Batman film. So I think at this point it's fair to say you're probably one of the top authorities on Batman in the world.
It's true, and it's a real weird thing for me to say out loud.
That's kind of
calling
impressive.
yourself an expert on something
we are.
Yeah, that's
we're
impressive.
Here to promote. We're here to promote. In terms of the mind of Bruce Wayne, you are one of the foremost experts in the entire world.
What is fun is like when I'll hear a friend say, it's like, yeah, he literally wrote the book on Batman.
Yeah. I'm going to tell people that now too.
There we go.
Yeah, my friend.
Yeah,
exactly.
My friend wrote the book on Batman, and I can't wait to get I've been reading the PDF version that you sent us, obviously, for the interview, but I can't wait to get a hardcover myself, so that when I eventually
I think the PDF is before the last correction. So I think the PDF you got is before the very last corrections.
Well, I want to have the cover here, and whenever I put my shelf here eventually soon, to display Batman and Psychology at Dark and Stormy Night, because like I said, I love the cover, and it's going to be an amazing piece next to my Daily Bugle.
What conventions do you guys get to?
I am trying to go to San Diego Comic-Con this year.
Okay.
I'm in Southern California, so that's
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm in
Canada.
Saskatchewan, Canada. So the only close ones I can get to are Edmonton Expo and Calgary Expo. And there's some decent stuff there. Like this Calgary one, especially this year, it seems to be like the wildest guest list I've seen in recent memory in terms of for a Western Canada type con. But I'm tempted to start getting out to the States for some stuff a little bit more. My fiance does some cosplaying and loves going to cons, so it's time to start heading out.
I think you should do that. Yeah.
San Diego is a nice one to get to in the middle of the summer. I mean, for me, I'm coming from someplace that's hot and humid, and then going to somewhere that's around 70 degrees with no rain almost all the time.
It rained here yesterday, actually, but the odds of that happening
negative 25 with snow on the ground here. So
one year when I went to San Diego Comic-Con, it was very misty the whole weekend. I think it was about 2008, maybe 2009, 2010. Yeah, whatever. It was one of them years. I love going to San Diego. I love going there. And of course, I've seen so little of it outside the convention and that area because I'm so involved in what goes on with the con.
I'm sure you have panels and everything you have to go to. And
I always do.
and-
Well, WonderCon, which will be in Anaheim in
Oh,
April.
that's right.
I'm gonna
next
be
to
on.
me.
I'm gonna be on 4 panels.
I might have to go to that then. I'm right south of Anaheim, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'm
sounds
by
like
Irvine.
a perfect opportunity for us to buy a few of those hardcovers and get them signed for an Agents of Fandom giveaway.
All right. Well, I'll see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, it's a deal then.
Heck yes. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute blast. And I have a feeling this won't be the last time, because even if we don't get to just shoot the shit again in the future, based on some of the upcoming projects you have, I feel like we may be interested in having conversations on those as well. That'll do it for our episode today. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video. Follow our socials at Agents Fandom on Twitter. Everywhere else, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, it's Agents of Fandom. You can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. When we transferred ownership recently, like we said, we're independent. We got new links and new licensing, but it also meant that some people lost their subscription. So go in there. You may have to resubscribe to get the automatic downloads going, but that ain't.
They're worth it.
Exactly.
Thank you. Dr. Travis Langley says we're worth it.
There's the endorsement.
Distinguished
They're worth it.
psychologist.
Dr. Travis Langley.
My psychologist told me I'm worth it.
Yeah.
And so I'm feeling good about myself.
That's
today.
a good way to put it.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a great way to put it. And on that note.
And that'll do it for the Agents of Fandom episode today. Thank you so much to Dr. Travis Langley for joining us. That will be our Batman primer. Final message of the day. We are worth it. And you are too. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.